Now we're live.
Bye.
Okay, so what we want to talk about is locational astrology, or in other words, how when you're born, the planets are sitting in certain places over the earth, and it's creating a certain kind of atmosphere or energy all over the world. So if you go to a certain place, you're going to get a certain kind of effect. You're getting a certain kind of effect that happens around the world. So say, and so this is a very interesting thing that I discovered a little bit ago, and I would use it, but then I really started getting deep into it and like looking at the practical applications, and it's almost scary because I've lived in many different places around the world, and the kinds of things that I had happen to me in those places fit perfectly with my locational astrology chart. So it's very powerful, especially because it can help you find, if you have certain goals in mind, or even if you want to go on a particular kind of trip, then you can find a place that you want to go and stay, and it can give you that kind of energy, which is sitting in that place. And then the other thing is, if you have the other practical application that we've been using it for is that you can find places to do advertising for your business or other things like that as well. It's very useful and very, very accurate for that as well. It's extremely accurate for finding places to do advertising for business, and if you want to make extra money or something like that, it's very strong for, if you know how it fits into your chart, then you can find places. So like, for example, the seventh house, I have Saturn exalted, right? And I was born into Saturn phase, and I was born on my Saturn line. Now I have it in the seventh house. I almost died when I was in my Saturn period. I was a small baby, and I almost died. My mom told me about it. She said that I was having seizures all the time when I was a baby.
Really?
Yeah, I was having seizures all the time, and I had spinal meningitis.
Oh, man.
And she said that they took me to the doctors and nothing was working. And what happened was I was at one point I had a fever. It was really, really terrible, and I was crying and crying. And she said that it came to, and I stopped crying, and she thought I was dead. And she just started crying to Krishna, and all of a sudden I woke up and I opened my eyes, and then all the stuff was gone, and it never came back again.
Oh, wow.
So the thing is that so I almost died there, and that was the Saturn line, and Saturn's in my seventh house, which is a death house in astrology. So that's one of the potencies of this kind of energy. Is so when you see these things, you see where the planets line up in your chart. You can see, oh well, then if I live in this kind of place, it might be kind of dangerous. Or what happened was later on, because my Saturn was exalted, it was double whammy because I was in Saturn phase and I was living in a Saturn line, right? And it's in my seventh house, which is death house. So, and I probably had some kind of yoga or something which created or caused a Saturn kind of energy to try and kill me at that time. But then what happened was when I turned about 3 years old, we moved to the San Joaquin Valley in California. Now, that's the sixth house for me. Now, there was a sun line for me in that place. Now, the thing with the sun lines is very interesting. I guess I'm kind of teaching a little bit about astrology as well while I'm doing this. So, the Saturn lines can be, you get the Saturn energy, and what you have to do is look at your chart to see how it's going to affect you on that line. You see what I'm saying? Right. So then I was in the sun line, but that was in the sixth house. So the sixth house is friends and enemies and all kinds of other things. So the highlight, and especially with the sun, what you got to understand is people respect you on a sun line, but at the same time, if you're too bright, people become very jealous of you. is that's the downside of the sun. Ego, if you become powerful from the sun's energy, but you become egotistical, you get a lot of haters.
But is it more favorable for somebody to live on their sun line if their sun is
Oh, if it's
better
it's
placed
if it's like you have
than
sun in
sixth
Aries, oh
house?
man, then it's
Okay,
perfect.
right,
But mine's in the sixth house, so it
right.
made it
So
somewhat difficult.
right.
So a lot of my early childhood growing up time was extremely kind of like intense. That was a very like extremely, there was I had a lot of enemies when I was living on the sun line. So that's what you see, because the sun is in the sixth house. When I was there, had a lot of enemies. Had a lot of a lot of people didn't like me when I was there, and it still continues. I get a lot of jealousy, tend to sometimes. Depends on how things are going on, but I don't really care about it. I like it. Yeah, no, it's if people put energy on you, if someone's jealous of you, you're literally giving power to that person. So yeah, it's great. You think they're great, so they're saying, "Oh, you're great, you're great," and you're like, "Hey, yeah, thanks for thanks for believing in me." Anyway, so the thing is that when I was on the sunlight, it was a very intense time in that sense. Then later on, so it was a kind of intense on the sunline for me. If somebody else had a really good sunline, it would be really good for them. You know, sunline gives you a lot of favor if you have a decent sun. Like if somebody has like the sun in Leo or something, holy God, if they were to live on the sunline, they would just be like it'd be wonderful for them. Then later on, I ended up moving to Tennessee, and that was moonline for me.
Oh.
And what ended up happening with the moon line was the earth was very nurturing there for me.
Mine.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have the moon in the fourth house, and to this day, I kind of want to. If I ever had the ability to, I would want to have like a little cabin in Tennessee, just because I felt so much at home there. The mother nature, like I walked, if you walk in the woods are different. If I go in the woods in Florida, I'm thinking it's trying to eat me. And maybe some people might have different experiences of those woods, but when I was in the woods of Tennessee, I felt like they were it was like Mother Earth was just like, oh, come here, you're my baby, come. And later on, I always thought, oh, well, maybe the nature there is more friendly and the nature of other places is mean or something. But what I'm thinking it is simply that the moon line made me feel more like that the nature
Right.
there was more loving or more at home.
Right.
So if you want to live, if maybe it might, what ended up happening was it was the downside of living on the moon line for me was it was too emotional. The emotions were too strong.
Right.
It's a good place, like for someone with a moon, which is the kind of moon that I have. The other thing is I have Saturn looking at the moon, which has kind of like a little bit of a downside to it. So when I was staying on the moon line, then there's free programs, you can just look and see where your lines are. It's not hard.
Yeah, we use astro.com.
Yeah, astro.com.
I mean, there's software programs, apps for it. But as far as I know, it lines up with astro.com, and that's just the most easy. If you go to the travel astrology.
You just search for
AstroClick.
AstroClick travel.
It's very easy to use.
And just find where your lines are, and then you can see. And so I had the moon line going through Tennessee, and what ended up happening was just the emotions would become too strong and too overwhelming. But if somebody has a moon line and in their chart, it's a good place to go. Like if you need to get away, you need some nurturing. The moon is really good for that. The moon is really good for nurturing energy. So if you know where you have a moon line, if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, what you do is you go to the moonline area, like on a vacation or something.
What if the moon is not good?
Well, if the
Like,
moon
what
is
if
not,
the moon is like, you know,
oh yeah, Scorpio or something,
debilitated,
yeah.
conjunct Rahu, you know,
Then you
like
would want to stay
like
away
difficult.
because then you would want to stay away because the kind of energy you would get when you stay in a moonline area would be extremely intense, and then like it would make you stressed out more than anything else.
Right.
So you do kind of, it was buyer beware in the sense you have to know your chart
Yeah.
before you know what you want to do and where you want to go. You know?
Yeah.
So then the other thing is then I moved to West Virginia, was on the same place, so I stayed there for a while, and that's where the emotions, it was mixed with some other energy as well, which is there's a little bit of, because there's major lines and then there's minor lines. So the thing is that I had a minor line going through there. It was mixing up with Neptune, which makes it extremely intense. In the sense, when I was staying in Vrindavan at that time, so it felt really good. But just if it's a slow creep. But the things start to manifest, and Neptune makes you run into little crazy people. I mean, Vrindavan is a nice place, but it's a little cuckoo out there. I mean, anybody that's lived there knows that. Okay. It's in West Virginia. It's a little cuckoo out there. There's a reason they call it the funny farm. And the thing is, it's what they call it. So the thing is that it's a little cuckoo out there, so it kind of fit the description of what Neptune does. So it was a slow creep, but it started to build and build and build. So then, after that, I ended up moving to Alachua, which is right on my Mars line. So I have Mars in Scorpio, and so it's not so bad. I mean, the thing is, when you living on the Mars line, you just have to know you have it. If your Mars is halfway decent, it's good for you. But the cool thing about when I was living on the Mars line, if you have a Mars line, at least for me, what happened, because my Mars is in the eighth house represents hidden things, secret things, the occult, stuff like that. I ended up doing a lot of yagas there, doing a lot of spiritual things. A lot of eighth house things became more manifest in my chart. And so that's kind of like what the theme was. The other thing is, when you stay in the Mars area, you have a lot more physical energy. So most of the work that I did there was farming involved. And that also has to do with the ground, right? The eighth house has a lot to do with the earth, in the sense you can, if somebody has a lot of stuff in the eighth house, they either have to deal with the bodies, which you put in the ground, or a lot of times they deal with minerals, like extraction of minerals or oil or roots too. But so I was doing a lot of farming because I was there. All my hands were always in the earth, digging in the earth when I was over there in Florida.
Wow.
And so that's how that energy kind of manifested itself in when I was living in Florida. It kind of did that kind of thing to my chart. And so I was having these kind of situations. And so then for a period, I lived in India. So I spent 2 years in India, 1 year each time. And the same time I went to India, sometimes, if you look at these charts, there's like a pretty open space, and it's more like neutral zone, like a neutral zone. And the energy, the first time I went to India, I was in more of a neutral zone. So I was kind of far from everything. So it just kind of felt like a kind of normal experience, I guess you could say. But the second time I was plopped down right on the middle of a Pluto line. Because I was living in Mumbai and Gujarat, I have a Pluto line that goes right through there.
How was that?
That was a very interesting experience. Now, this is my interpretation of what a Pluto line does, because I've been in a few actually. The Pluto line is karmic.
Where's your Pluto?
My Pluto's in the seventh house.
Okay.
And then interestingly, I had relationship stuff when I was there.
Right.
And so the thing is that so my Pluto is in the seventh house, but what I noticed when I was that Pluto lines are karmic lines, and I think it's almost transcendental in the sense the way I interpret it and what I've seen works the best when you're dealing with Pluto is it has a lot of energy of your past life karma, what activities you did in that region. See, the thing is that it's a mixed bag because when I was there, it was so good for me. But at the same time, it was very interesting because, like, literally, I was when I was in India, it's like the devas were just, I could just say, oh, I wonder what's going on. I want to do this. And all of a sudden it would come to me. It's like I would just, so much kinds of happiness and things would just come to me. You know what I mean? And I definitely had this feeling almost like I had done some punya in another life, and then it just, because I had done that in that region, I had done some kind of things. It was like, okay, well, you have a karmic balance, so we have to like level that out. Since you're here, we're gonna like do that kind of a thing.
Pluto is the one that they associate with Shiva, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because the first time that I was there, I stayed at Ujjain, which is the city in the middle of India, and it's the home of Mahakal, which is one of the biggest and most powerful Shiva lingams in North India.
Okay.
And he's a really amazing deity, actually. So Mahakal was the deity that was in charge of the first place that I lived when I went to India. They were just starting the temple in Ujjain there. So yeah, I just kind of, we went there, we were making a Mahabharata video game. See, that was another thing. And I've never actually had to pay to travel to India. It's always been work. So it's just kind of how it works out. So I've never really done the tourist thing for India. I mean, maybe that's part of the Pluto thing too, because it's like I said, it's karmic. It's a karmic planet,
Right.
So every time that I go to that region, it's got to do with work. It's got something to do with that kind of a thing. So that's the thing this is just my experiences with the locational astrology, and so far it's rung 100% true. And you may notice if you've done traveling, you go to a place and it feels like nice, you have a good time. You go to another place and you're like, oh God, I can't even stand living here. And different kinds of things like that, happen in our life. And there's a lot of factors like that. And the thing is, this energy is constantly flowing in those areas at all times. So if you're intelligent, you can utilize that energy to your benefit if you know how to do it. So what you can do is you can say, oh, well, I know that Venusian energy has this particular kind of, thing that happens. So how can I utilize that in my life, right? So the thing is that if you want to utilize that Venusian energy, you can move to that place or you can try and sell things in that place. If you try and, like, if you know where the Venus line is and you sell products that are Venus oriented, then you can utilize that line and then you could try and advertise or market in that region for that product, and then all of a sudden you have a much better chance of selling that thing. And there's all kinds of things like that that are associated with locational astrology. So you can really and truly utilize that kind of power and energy if you know what your chart is and how to look at it, and then you know how to kind of line it up and say, okay, well, this is, I can grab from here and go there. And this is one of the powers of astrology, really, is that you can do that kind of a thing. You can, it's not just predicting the future. You can also utilize astrology in a powerful way, almost, and kind of say, okay, well, what do I want to do, and know where that energy is, and kind of take it and bring it into your life, and then say, okay, that's the next level of astrology, I guess you could say, is the practical application. And because I have the sun in Virgo, that's the way I always think about things is, okay, I have this knowledge, so how am I going to like take it and like do something with it that has some kind of results or something like that. But I mean, I guess there's other signs that think that way too, but that's kind of like what happens to me. And so what's
like the earth sign?
Yeah.
Practical.
Yeah, practical.
Something practical with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, I just moved to my Mars line. And previous to this, I pretty much lived on my Saturn line since birth, because it goes on a diagonal, not like pretty much a diagonal where it hits New York and Florida, like pretty directly, just right there. And the only time that I didn't, and I was born into Saturn because I'm Uttara Bhadra moon, in Pisces, which makes me be born in Saturn. I also have Saturn in the seventh house. And the only time that I didn't live on the Saturn line was a brief time that I lived in Colorado, and that was right on my Mercury line. And it was such a difference in energy. It was so good there that I felt so optimistic that I felt like, because I had set up a little business there with a partner, and it was like really a nice setup and really could have gone really well. But then I got pulled back into stuff in Florida, and it's like I was in such a optimistic state from being on my state of mind, from living on my Mercury line after, getting away from my Saturn line after all those years. I didn't know any of this, by the way. I only started paying attention to locational astrology in the last year, 2 years, really. So this is after the fact. Going retrospect, I was so optimistic being on Mercury line that I thought that I could recreate what we had done in Colorado and Florida, even though I knew that I had tried so many things in Florida and nothing really panned out, like it was just kind of restricted, and all the things that it says for a Saturn line that you know about Saturn already. And seriousness when you want to be creative, rigidity when this is the Saturn effect. Also, people tend to age more. Like, that's the idea. I mean, I don't, but whatever. Like, that's the idea. I don't feel like I have no problem, but who knows? My health could be better now being on the Mars line. This is the different things. It's a big switch of energy now. I just got here. So now let's see, how this is going to be. But it should be good just because, and it makes sense, like with that, because I am planning to move to Dallas. This offer came to me just, a few months ago. So they didn't know, and I didn't put it together, that I was just entering my Venus Jupiter. And in my chart, Jupiter and Mars are mutual exchange. So everything that has to do with Mars has to do with Jupiter. So it makes sense that it would bring me here. And plus I have Mars in my 12th house, which is, kind of the secrets of life. It's also coming out on the internet. Internet is like 12th house stuff. I never done this before. This is another thing. This is very Mars line. Also Uranus, because it's Mars and Uranus. So this is also Uranus-like, just like electricity and like, the thing that connects us, the invisible thing that connects us is like the Uranus part. So like all of that is activated. Again, this is looking at it after the fact. So it wasn't even like I planned it. So life is, usually when we look at it, it's already happening. It's the most useful thing to get this is to just look at your life and see what periods you've gone through, what's your chart, and see, okay, so like another example is my son. So my son has a lot of Nigerian friends. For whatever reason, his church, his like a lot of friends, he just like almost, he hangs out with a lot of Africans, but mostly Nigerians. Like his congregation, the pastor, just a lot of Nigerians, and he's been there twice already. So I was like, "What's up with Nigerians? Why are you? So he's like, I don't know. To him, it's like these are the people that I found, and he's real savvy. They're very savvy. I get it. In New York, just out of curiosity, I went to check. What is it? Why is this? So he has these very, very powerful points, because there's the lines, and then there's, I think you mentioned the zenith. Yeah. So the zenith. So he has this zenith of an exalted planet in Nigeria, like right there. So like, oh, okay, because he's even famous there. Like they even know about his more famous than here, with his music and stuff like that. Um, so it goes back to like what you were saying. It like shows you where to do business. Like even if you're not gonna go there. So I have things to test out with this too because I have the zenith of my Venus. I think it's in Nairobi.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't know if I'll ever go there. Like I don't have a reason or inclination,
But
as
you
of
could
right now
try
to
and
go
sell
there.
your.
But there's things that we can sell there, because of this strong thing, or like,
You
we can
can
try to
attempt. Yeah,
do.
you could try and see what you can do.
Right, exactly. So this is things that
Yeah, no, this is stuff
that
that
we'll
you
work
can.
on,
Yeah, this is stuff that
like
you can work on, and
yeah,
this is something that we're going to turn into a course.
yeah,
How to do that stuff, and how to look at your chart and how to utilize that energy. We're going to turn that into a course, and simple stuff. Really, we're going to do a mini course on how to find a good place to do a vacation, and then we're going to do a bigger course where we talk about all these different things, how to find the different things and what they all mean, and how to look at it in your chart, and different kinds of sadhanas and things that you can do to give yourself some more like inner vision or the special vision that comes when it helps with doing the astrology and things like that. These are the things that we see at Om Hint. We're trying to just propagate knowledge, really, and so that's kind of like the theme of what we're doing. And so this is our little talk about locational astrology and all the fun little bits and things about it. So thanks for coming in, and we do locational astrology charts for people as well. If you want to know like what's up and where's strong for you, then we can talk about that too. So anyway, thank you very much. Namaste.
namaste, thank you, radhe
Uh,
radhe.